Hello YouTube and welcome. BritizenCon 2018 has sadly come to a close, however that does not mean the fun stops there. During the day we managed to grab quite a few of the developers and bring them over to the live stream. So on behalf of the Asylum team, here are those developer interviews.
Glorious hairstyle to another. I think we're going to get the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Ricky Jutley.
The hair.
The hair, yes.
Can we just get the hair?
We could try, but maybe lack of vocals as well. Yeah, there you go.
Purely here for Ricky's hair. I'm just standing in the background.
Oh, it looks really bad as well. Sorry about that, guys.
It looks bad.
We have got a little bit of glare going on. But, welcome to BritizenCon.
Thank you. Awesome. It's really good to be here. I walked in and everyone was really, really friendly, saying hi straight away, and it was really, really, really cool. I can't remember. No, I didn't go last year. I didn't get a chance to.
Yeah.
I think I was just working on some release work, so really cool to get a chance to do it this time.
Are you enjoying yourself?
Yes. Walked in, met a fair few guys, got Luke Presley there giving me a very friendly gesture.
Friendly gesture.
You'll see that later if we film that kind of stuff as well. But no, it's been really, really cool. And I know that we had the AC little tournament on the side there. I think they came across a few bugs. And yeah, it's just been really, really good seeing everyone. And I hadn't seen the first panel, but I believe the second panel's starting pretty soon, actually.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
That's a dogfighting.
That's a dogfight.
Oh, is it?
Yeah,
it's not the panel.
No, so everything got a little bit delayed because we had
Oh, okay.
technical issues. Oh, yeah, I mean, I'm sure you're all aware of them sort of things.
All aware, we'll try and work through them.
Exactly. We
Hey,
kept
cool.
plugging at it and got through it eventually. So that's
Yes,
all good.
that's good.
So I've got a question for you.
Yes, go for it.
So you may not be able to answer this,
Of course you can.
will we get an update of the Jutley? Because obviously, you know, like the real world version
I
is.
told you this is what everyone cares about.
It is. It is. The Jutley seems a bit like less than what we should be getting, you know? So I'm
okay.
sure Shaq can agree, right?
So you know what? When I saw, I didn't even know about the Ricky until you know, we put it in and they actually renamed
Right.
before he actually went out. And I was talking to Sean Tracy, technical director, and a few of the other actual tech artists and the guys, and Josh Herman, and they mentioned, hey, this is the look that you had probably a year and a bit ago. So
Right.
when they put it in, and then I talked to Sean. I said, volume. Volume. And
Perfect for my hairstyle. We just need
Yeah, there's
there you go.
one request for Moise is he does
that's
want
it.
some
That's it.
blue.
Well,
and-
I mean, that's beautiful though. So, but no, and I did say to Sean, can we think about that? And then only actually, I think Thursday, he posted me the meme and stuff, and I wasn't aware of it, and I was like, whoa, this is pretty damn cool.
That's how you know you've made it in the
I was just about to say, yeah, there's just pretty much, you got to make it as
you're
a
a
dev.
meme,
is-
you-
yeah,
If you're
yeah.
a meme, it means something apparently. But no, I did say to him, well, maybe we could do a V2. And so I'd like to
Ricky
see a
V2.
V2.
Yeah.
Why not? Why
Like a
not?
bit of a retro one. Keep
There you
going
go.
as it gets bigger
Yeah.
and bigger,
Kinda
more and more.
customised
Is it
as
going to just
well.
keep going and going?
I don't know if reality can handle with it, but maybe in game, we could be.
Yeah,
so we'll have to
yeah.
see.
Are we going to get crazy colours like that?
I think so. I think the plan is definitely crazy colours, and to be honest, come on board. Let's show you the amazingness.
Yeah, we've got to have these two hairs next to each other.
That's pretty impressive, isn't it?
It is.
I mean, the volume's cool. He's got very clean. Very like to see that in game for sure.
It doesn't take much effort.
Doesn't really?
Your hair looks like it.
Yeah. it
Chat
probably
has
does.
asked how you do your hair. I mean,
Have
chat
they
for
asked?
you. Yeah.
Oh man, am I really gonna say this?
I mean,
or is it embarrassing? Shall
Well,
I
they
just do it?
do it. Yeah, do it because I mean, Brian had the whole thing about how he did his hair.
So Brian was legit. Okay, right. I'll start from the beginning. Then. You're lying to me, aren't you?
Of course
Anyway.
not. Does this face look like it lies?
Okay, so after shower, it probably dries a bit, and then a bit of sea salt spray, and then blow dry it for maybe 3 to 5 minutes, maybe 5 minutes, and then a bit of it's a bit of a wax or a bit of putty, and that's about it. It's not actually.
What's the
really
embarrassing
intense.
bits that you missed out, like the hair curlers and things?
No, the embarrassing bits is I said 3 to 5 minutes, but maybe it takes longer.
Yeah, I was wondering that when you kind of looked like you was debating 3, 5, maybe
What
5.
should I actually say?
Could
you
be
know?
10.
Yeah.
That's the key to truly procedural hair there. Yeah.
Wow, that's quite the way to put it, to be honest. Procedural hair, biome, just living in
Yeah.
the hair as well. We'll get some voids in there one time as well.
So what's next for the Ricky? I mean, like, of course, it was different last year.
Well, I said let's do a V2. It's the first thing, and then I think what if I just went completely bald? What if I did that? What would happen?
That's a big move.
I think Starcity would break.
It would break.
Yeah.
Something would break.
Is it going to be
in
a
the
way you
game.
can get like a space helmet that just like is cut into your hair can still be seen?
What if it had like several holes and then it could just like?
I mean, we've already got that at the moment, haven't we? Really?
Well, that's why I wanted
could
to
just
push
keep
for
it as a feature. It's like,
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know if you've seen some like motorcycle helmets where they have like their hair
Yes.
stuck in it. Yeah, you can just do that.
I could prove
Just
this
have
yeah.
hair sticking out of helmets at the moment, don't we?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Just keep it as a feature.
Yeah, exactly.
So what do you do for CIG?
I am a gameplay programmer. I worked on the IFCS flight control stuff for ships.
Oh my god, it's him.
is
It's
Dave
all
Colson,
down
yeah.
to him.
Yeah, so that's pretty much me at the moment.
And how is the flight control system at the moment? Headache or?
What's in the game at the moment is a headache, but we're working a lot to make it a lot better. It's probably going to take it's a pretty complicated system, right? And we sort of need it to scale to having, say, 60 ships in a game, which is pretty hard to do. And so we're working a lot on like longer term improvements so that it'll scale, right? And we won't lose as much. Like, we want to keep it as it is, but also be able to go bigger.
Yeah.
Because I think currently, like when we first wrote it, it was pretty much Arena Commander that it was written for.
Yeah.
And at the time, I don't think we even had procedural planets, and we didn't have nearly as many players and servers as we do now. So it's that challenge to like.
Has it been a lot harder to go from like programming stuff for Arena Commander because that was like your test bed for everything to then changing and testing it
There's
more
so
for
many
the PU?
like situations that you just forget about in the PU. Like generally, like QA is the last line before it's players, right? And even then, players find so many situations that I'm like,
We're good at it.
No, definitely. I mean, like
I didn't
you
even
know,
think this would be a thing you could do.
Well, there's so much in the physics code that obviously relates to the work that you're working on as well. So, you know, Dave will collaborate with so many different members of the team for
Yeah.
such an important feature of the game. And just like he mentioned there, you know, you start with a very controlled test bed in Arena Commander, and you know, it's just a very simple open space with a certain amount of radius. And when you go into the PU, then all of a sudden it changes everything because there's different physics grids involved. There's different, you know, world spaces, and it changes just everything. And then the chips as well, just, you know, variation of what a single general kind of combat fighter can do compared to, you know, one of the huge.
I mean, that's got to be
civilian
quite
ships as
hard
well.
to balance getting the flight controls working on something small and nimble to then big, massive ships that shouldn't be moving like that.
Yeah, and there's so much like finesse to it. Like it's a mechanic that, or like I guess a main feature of the game, right? That so many people care about. That they really pay attention to the little details more so than in other parts of the game. And so there's like very little room to get it wrong.
To
And
hide things.
There's very little. There's very little. Like you could make a tiny mistake that you don't even think about, and then it gets into the hands of players, and they're like, "This is shit" or whatever. Like, you know, paraphrasing, right? But,
No, that's what most people have.
but yeah, so it's hard to get right, and it's hard to get it right so that enough, like as many people as possible like it, because it's going to play into like desires of different players. Yeah, exactly. So some players really want it to be like racing,
how they want it to feel as well. So it's not just balancing yourself; it's balancing how people think that it should be feeling.
And that's the thing with the iteration as well. That's why we have obviously the Vicardi and then the PTU, because every time we get that, then every time we do a release on top of it, or we're midway in a release, then the feedback obviously comes. It goes to Chris, it goes to a few others, and then, you know, Dave can take a look at that with Andrew Nicholson, one of our, you know, technical designers who balances with him as well. So I think that's the important thing, that we keep getting the feedback from you guys, which is important.
And you get a lot of changes from your own test beds, like you just set up the QA, but then when it goes live as well, you seem to have things, it's like, well, this never happened to us. And
exactly.
we just get lots of comments, this never happened, why is it happening?
And it's really good taking the different opinions on that.
So what's been the biggest challenge then with IFCS? I mean, like maybe not necessarily like presently, but you've been working here for how long now?
9 months.
Right. And what's been the biggest challenge for you, and that you can tell us about, like in the whole like balancing of IFCS and everything else you've done?
So there's so much that controls how ships fly that very subtle things can make it wrong. And sometimes you get like reports that, you know, this doesn't feel right or something, but it's super hard to pin down what that is that's wrong. and there's so much that you need to, like, if you've got like hundreds of variables that are all controlling how ships fly,
Right.
it could be any one of them, but usually it's a combination of things that you just didn't think about.
Yeah, not just one key thing.
So just how subtle are these variables then?
Well, like I've had bugs where, like, apparently there was one time where QA were flying into planets, and everything was fine, no problems. You fly into a planet's atmosphere, and you turn, and the ship would just start rolling, and you're like,
Why?
how do I even approach this?
Yeah.
There's so many things that could be wrong, and you have to like really carefully. Like we're putting a lot of effort into the moment into making new tools to like visually like see what ships are doing while you're flying them and stuff.
The feedback stuff that you said you was so when you were doing the stress test, like on the PU, the test server the other day, like we're logging everything.
Yeah.
So you get more feedback and things. So that you find that helps a lot more to kind of pinpoint those errors.
We also got fairly new tools that let you like on the fly edit ships how fly,
Right.
Like how they fly. So you can, like previously we couldn't do this. We can now. Is you would have like a ship flying around in a game, and designers can like tune its handling, and it'll just change how it's flying while it's flying, and that really helps us like
Yeah, I can
work
imagine.
through handling like that. We haven't previously been able to do that.
So speaking of handling and stuff, I mean, like, so this game is very realistic in terms of what it tries to do and what it tries to get out and give to the player. Like, there's a lot of immersion and stuff going into it. So the issue is, like, with some players, like flying a ship and stuff, things like inertia can like cause things like motion sickness and stuff.
Yep.
What sort of like considerations have you put into it to like, I guess, have you had any considerations for players like that? And if so, can you give us any inferences on the kind of stuff that you're trying to think about to maybe make the game a bit easier for them, or is it kind of a thing like, well, maybe it's not a game for them?
It's a really hard question to answer.
Yes.
I think, that is pretty hard. Pretty much, we don't. It's really hard to design like that from the start. So it's much easier to like do it the sort of most obvious way first, and then test it with people who are going to have like motion sickness problems, and try and figure out what's actually like the problem for them.
Yeah.
Because I don't get motion sickness, right? So it's very hard for me to be like, oh, this is going to cause motion sickness, because that could be way off.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's much easier to actually have someone who has that issue play it, and then figure out from them if it's maybe, like sometimes it's the disconnect from the camera of the player and the ship's movement and stuff.
Yeah.
And so we can like maybe put a setting in to turn that off, or like it's easier to sort of see how it's affecting players than to try and predict how it will affect.
Yeah, I mean,
players.
there's lots of different things that can affect people and lots of different ways. So, like you said, that you can't plan for every eventuality. So, in some ways, it is easier to get push it out there, get that feedback, and then tweak it that way. Basically.
No, I totally agree. I think Dave hit on a point where it's sometimes if we don't have motion sickness and we don't get that, then it's difficult to just think
understand
right
it,
away. However, though, I think that when we put an initial iteration out, those considerations are thought about, and we try and think, well, is there something very obvious there? And when the obvious things are very apparent, then we'll try and address those, and then there'll be a further stage of then, well, let's get someone that maybe has motion sickness, and then have that kind of test bed with those guys. So that's how we get the feedback.
Sounds like a sound way of doing it, really.
I think it usually ends up better in terms of like complexity in the game if you're not trying to add a whole bunch of like features to account for stuff that may not be that big of a problem.
Yes,
right?
yeah. So you're making a lot more work for yourself that
Exactly.
may not turn out to be.
I mean, you'll always get edge cases in any kind of system, and that's why you try and polish those out and completely try to eliminate them where you can. But I think you can only probably cover a general area of that, maybe like 60 to 80%, and then the last 20 that you're trying to polish it out and try and roll it out, and that's when you get a bit more with the focus testing, and obviously with those groups of trying to make sure that you account for even more extreme edge cases afterwards.
How have you found having the Delta patcher now that you can put out these little hot fixes and that? You found that being a lot more useful for feedback and testing.
Well, I was going to say, how have you found it? Because
It's amazing.
That's the big thing,
I mean, I've been doing Evocati testing, so I know what it's like to download about 3 builds a day as well. So having the thing where you can just patch a little bit has been a huge.
It was very important for us, and I know that the guys actually putting the systems together, and actually the build guys actually plug that in at the moment. When they had other priorities and we wanted to be able to get builds in and other things on their backlog, on their roadmap, it was like, well, no, we got to focus on this, and eventually getting it out. We've seen the benefits of it. When you go home and you just click a button, and the change and the difference, such an important thing. Very nice, simplistic feature as well. So I'm glad that we're there now.
Yeah.
So would you say there's a bit less pressure now for non-feature specific things to kind of get them out, at 100%? Because right now we have I think 3.1.3 and 3.1.2, and we're trying to get to the bottom of a whole bunch of performance issues. I mean, I'm not trying to ask a difficult question, but I'm just
okay. Go for it. However you want to ask it. It's fine.
But is there less pressure to get it perfect the first time? Because obviously you know
you'd have to wait a long time.
Is it a relief to have it in, basically?
Well, I think you can always obviously decide to patch where you need to, and I would say that the real major issues, there'll be smaller patches, and that's what we can use now. And obviously before, well, it would be a bit longer and you'd have to go through it, but the benefit is that it'll be a better patch. I think now I wouldn't say it's less pressure, but it's more enjoyment, and that's the big thing. It's kind of, we can make this iterative cycle every time.
Right.
We can do these little point patches every time, and we can still make decisions if we want to do a larger patch and a smaller patch, but it is very beneficial right now.
I also presume that if by doing the smaller patches as well, when you save the patches up and we had big patches, like you said, once it got out to live, you'd notice things that were going wrong that wasn't doing it before. So now when you're doing a smaller patch, it might not break so much, or at least you can kind of roll those back as well, rather than having that big issue of, we've just downloaded a massive patch, it's going to take ages before we come around to fixing that again.
No, I totally understand that. One of the things that we always see is a diff between change lists, i.e., if you're looking within something like Perforce and you see there's a huge amount of changes between things and you only want to include a certain few,
just this little bit.
I just want that little one. But if you're doing a bigger patch, or if you didn't have the delta patching, sometimes you're going with a few more different changes and stuff, and so the control that you have with being able to put out exactly what you want is a lot better. Sure.
So I have a bit of a less technical question.
Go for it.
So in terms of the game and the project in general, what are you guys looking forward to the most in terms of, let's say, I don't know if you guys are gamers. I mean, you don't have to be a gamer to work on games. But what are you looking forward to the most? What excites you the most about the project in terms of things that you would see yourself doing when the game is out, like exploration, that kind of thing?
I think for me personally, it would be to have a career within the game. I think for me, I've always loved games, and I think a really important thing is kind of, you can go finish work and then you can come home and you can then switch on a game and you can be totally immersed in something like people immersed in God of War right now, and a big change of what that game represents. And I think that with this game, I want to be able to log in, I want to be able to have that persistence to say, okay, well, I'm going to wake up, I'm going to choose who I am and have a career of what I'm going to be doing, whether or not I'm a really kick-ass pilot or maybe I'm a captain of the fleet or something, and with my org and stuff. And I think having a role in the game that is always persistent and continuing, so I'm building myself over time, is very important. So I think that's the thing that I'm looking most excited to, is playing the game with multiple people and seeing where that evolves.
Coming off of that, I think the thing that's really important for me is this idea of ship persistence, that you're not having throwaway ships, right? This is a ship that's yours, and you're going to play with it for a long time, and then we're working toward having ships that sort of get worn, and maybe they won't be as reliable, and you'll have to repair them on the go, and keeping your ship for weeks and weeks at a time, and really growing really attached to it is something that really excites me, because it's so much more different to in Arena Commander, you tend to make a lot of really big risks with your ship. And it's I think it's one of our biggest challenges in design, is trying to find that balance between punishing you for losing your ship, but also making you want to not lose your ship. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, because at the moment it's even though people try to do the kind of persistence things, the ships are still very much throwaway. And obviously with the bugs and lag and things like that, sometimes your ships crash and burn and things like that. So it'd be nice when we can go over to, like you said, actually feeling like your ship is your ship.
Yes.
And it's going to be the same one that you pull out each time, and with the damage persistence and things like that as well. So it's that is my ship, because the engine's missing.
It fits in with Ricky's career idea, right? That your career is going to be over the course of certain ships.
Yeah.
And that ship is a section of your career. It's like you're doing your career and you have a job, right? And you're doing your career in the game and you have a ship that is going to be for some period of time that you go attached to and then you move on. And I really like that idea. I think that's quite exciting to play a game like that.
Is there any like mechanics and things you look forward to working on that you maybe not doing that? So not the actual what you're going to play, but actually working on. So is there something like mining coming up? What I look forward to working on something like
I
that?
think for me, because we've obviously just mentioned it with 3.2 would be mining is exactly the one that I'm looking forward to. We have the really cool prototype right now where obviously you being able to break apart minerals and have the extraction, and we've started to put together the visual prototype of it. But now I really like our HUD to actually show the levels of extraction and what commodities you're taking or what minerals you're taking from that. And I think that is very different gameplay to what we've done previously in our different patches and different releases. So that's the one that I'm looking to really much in the short term for sure. I think and watching it and working with the team really closely, and Matt Lightfoot, who's actually here today, is producing that as well. And just I'm always on top of him, and he's always telling me where the progress is. It's really exciting because you get to see all that really cool stuff, and the aim is to deliver it in 3.2.
So in most other like MMOs and traditional games where you go ahead and you mine and you gather resources, mining is kind of a very passive thing. You find a node, you press a button, and you get the resources, right? Well, from what we saw in ATV, it seemed like maybe there'd be a bit more skill involved in making sure that you don't overcharge the rock and that kind of thing. So to what degree of kind of skill do you reckon that mining will have in the game?
I think for 3.2 we'll do a first iteration, which obviously, as you saw and as you alluded to just there, you'll be able to have an element of control rather than just, oh cool, I've achieved something by pressing a button and I'm done and I've got what I wanted.
Right.
There's got to be a bit more challenge for that, and I think 3.2 will touch upon that with what we have there. But I think that there's different avenues that you can go to. There's different. I can imagine different devices that will able to decide how you want to be able to extract or how you want to detect minerals and how you want to detect anything that's a real cool commodity as opposed to something else. And and maybe if someone's attacking you as well, there's got to be variations of what you can do to extract things and how that's protected and how that's actually absorbed and stuff. So there's quite a lot there that you can do and that we've been thinking about. But I think the first iteration will be kind of what we saw originally.
Or like a dangerous resource like dynamitanium or something that requires a bit more finesse.
Very nice name.
Right.
But yeah, I think
that one.
done. I think that would be a way to look at it as well, because there's always high risk, high reward with anything that you decide to pick up. So that'll be really cool for the gameplay.
Okay.
Cool.
Right on.
Sweet. I want to see if there's a panel going on, but this is pretty cool. I'm kind of immersed in it now.
Stay, it's fine.
Total immersion.
Take the rest over.
That's fine.
It's been great chatting to you. Thank you very much for
very
asking
good.
questions.
Very good stuff. Very
good
good
to meet you.
Thank you. Awesome stuff.
Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much.